says N-O-W, and he means N-O-V. He's European, so he's got a little bit of the V and W influence mixing. But the November is N-O-W, and he means N-O-V. He's European, so he's got a little bit of the V and W influence mixing. But the November issue is out, and I've got an entire chapter on XRP. Did some research, got a bunch of information, a lot of interesting things, and that is the big highlight for this month. The previous month, I had an entire chapter on silver. Silver and gold have taken a little bit of a break. I think it's a dollar honeymoon. With Trump, it won't last much longer, I believe. But golden-jackass.com is the website, and the newsletter is into its 21st year now. I'm no longer a youngster. I'm almost a senior citizen, and I like to think, and I believe it is the case, that with the help of my colleagues who are very sharp and a lot of says N-O-W, and he means N-O-V. He's European, so he's got a little bit of the V and W influence mixing. But the November issue is out, and I've got an entire chapter on XRP. Did some research, got a bunch of information, a lot of interesting things, and that is the big highlight for this month. The previous month, I had an entire chapter on silver. Silver and gold have taken a little bit of a break. I think it's a dollar honeymoon. With Trump, it won't last much longer, I believe. But what are we doing up so high? I think the U.S. economy is in tatters, and it's really easy money that's lifting the Dow rather than large-scale profitability. We're in an economic depression, and we got all-time highs for the stock market. If you can resolve that in 18 sentences or less, you're smarter than I am. The Dow, I think, is at least 70% overvalued. I wouldn't want to own a single stock in it. I think it's headed for a decline. And, these expected continued rate cuts, I don't believe are going to continue. And when that realization takes hold, I think the stock market is likely to sell off a bit, maybe even gather some momentum if the threat of 100% tariffs takes hold in the United States. And now Trump can say what he wants and say what his handlers order him to say, and he doesn't have to win any more elections. So this tariff idea is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my adult life as an economic policy. So that's, I think, going to do some harm to the stock market because it's going to be, I think, maybe even devastating to the U.S. economy. So, yeah, overvalued by quite a bit, the Dow.
NASDAQ continues to hit new all-time highs this week. What's pushing the NASDAQ higher and higher?
Well, it's cheap money, easy money, monopoly money just pours into the market. But the NASDAQ is different. It has a lot of technology stocks. I think there's a general sense that technology is going to have a bigger role. And at the cusp, you have artificial intelligence and NVIDIA. And those are all great for changing a perception and actually producing a paradigm shift. So I would like NASDAQ more than the Dow and S&P 500, but I do believe that all the stocks are overvalued in the United States because we're in an economic depression. And those who don't see an economic depression, I accuse you of being blind or a New York Times effing moron. The price inflation is at least 6%, maybe 7% higher than the official number, which means the economic growth is 6 or 7% lower than what they claim, and that puts the nation into depression territory. And with the inflation, it's called inflationary depression. We're in scary times. We've never had worse economic deception in the numbers, in the data. And it's easy to parse out. It's ridiculously easy to parse out. I'll give you just one example. The Chapwood consumer price index, 500 different items, 50 different cities in the United States, and their conclusion in 2023 was that we had between an 8.5% and a 10.5% price inflation, 8.5% to 10.5% price inflation. The bigger the city, the bigger the price inflation. The economy is ridiculously distorted as being positive. We're in an economic depression.
The U.S. dollar's been pulling back for a couple of weeks. Where do you think the dollar is headed from here?
I said right after the election, it was like 2 or 3 days after the election, I said, oh my gosh, look at this. We're seeing a dollar rally. And this is what I call a Trump honeymoon. The honeymoon is manifested in the financial markets as a rise in the dollar, and correspondingly, gold and silver sold off. But they maintained support above the previous ceiling, and that's really important from a technical standpoint. I claimed right after the election that we're probably going to see a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, who knows, where the dollar is going to maintain its high value, and it is not justified. It is not justified at all. And let me give you some quick constructs that support a higher dollar that are not part of reality. The dollar is rising because there's an expectation that the U.S. government debt is going to get resolved or fixed in some sense. Well, no, I think Trump might actually increase the deficit. He's going to make a new Department of Government Efficiency, so that's more hiring. It'll be different to get rid of people. So the deficit is not going to be fixed. The debt is not going to be fixed. Price inflation is not going to be fixed. And we're not going to have peace breaking out. Just look what happened in Syria. That's an example that Trump will not bring about an end to war. So Trump won't fix the deficit, won't fix the debt, won't fix price inflation, will be very slow in bringing down the size of government, and the budget cuts is going to be a war. So there's nothing in the constructs that has lifted the dollar that is based in reality beyond a short-term honeymoon kiss. And I think the honeymoon is just about over with the war in Syria, which is very complex. The dollar's going to head a little bit lower, but remember, the dollar, when it dies, it rises. The dollar will go, I said this 8 years ago, the dollar's going to go up, and then up some more before it vanishes. The dollar will go up as it is dying. It's called a supernova, and it's very complex. It's full of paradoxes and not very well known. The crash is going to be manifested in the form of price inflation. The dollar is going to buy less. So that's the crash of the dollar. The dollar is going to go down of gold. Gold will go up. So that's the dollar crash. The dollar is going to go up relative to other forex currencies.
Could interest rates and especially mortgage rates be heading higher?
Yeah, I think once the Fed decides and announces that they're going to stop cutting rates, and when the financial markets figure that out, I think mortgage rates will reverse and go back up a little bit, but it's really not helped the real estate market. A little bit lower interest rates does not help the real estate market when lenders do not want to lend and income is not plentiful in order to qualify for loans. The real estate market, I think, is headed for another 30% decline.
What's the latest on the real estate markets?
Well, it's just that mortgage rates have come down, and it's really not helped much. Commercial real estate is in terrible shape because banks don't want to lend. Banks want to confiscate the properties when the mortgage ends and they cannot refinance. It's a predatory situation now with the big banks and commercial property. The real estate market, I just don't think it can come back. I've been saying this now for 2 years. What we've got now with the U.S. government debt problem and the interest rate and the bond market distress, this is Lehman times 5. And Lehman brought about 10 and 15, 20% decline in the real estate market. I think we got something worse with the real estate market this time around, and the leading point of failure and decline is commercial real estate. It's turned predatory. The banks, I believe, are colluding not to refinance commercial mortgages, and instead they just take the property. Why refinance it when you can just seize the property title?
Do you think the price of crude oil is manipulated?
Well, yeah, the Rockefellers are in the room. The Rockefellers are the dominant monopoly in the oil market, and they bought their way in the 1950s and 60s decade. The crude oil market is manipulated. And look what happened in the first week after Biden stole the election and started occupying the White House and making executive orders by means of Obama's mouth and the puppet strings from the Rockefeller office. They closed down the Colonial Pipeline and all prices went up. Okay, the Rockefellers benefit from higher prices, so they do what they can to interfere with supply lines. And the Rockefeller connection to Saudi Arabia and UAE, it's being severed, and it's a long process. So yeah, the crude oil price is manipulated, but increasingly, Jim, it's Russia that controls the oil market, increasingly, because now we even got a name for it. We call it OPEC Plus. OPEC is a bunch of nations, like Saudi and the Persian Gulf nations, UAE, but also Nigeria, Venezuela, not Singapore, Indonesia. Well, OPEC Plus means add Russia. And Russia has had Saudi on a leash for the last 3 or 4 years or more. And Russia's been dictating policy. Russia tells the Saudis what to say regarding their open-mouth petroleum policy. And as a result, expectations for reduced or amplified supply come about, and Russia is in control. So, yeah, it's manipulated, but now it's a battle between Rockefellers and Russia. And it's really quite intriguing to watch.
Bitcoin hit over $100,000. Is Bitcoin the new gold?
I don't like that term. There is no new gold. Gold is the new gold. Gold will always be gold. And Bitcoin doesn't have the properties of gold. Bitcoin is not exactly fungible, and you can't put it on the bottom of a sea and recover it 30 years later with retained value. The interesting part right now is that Bitcoin has hit the target of 100,000. And I want to clear some things up here. I've had a number of clients write to me, and even in Contact Us, which is more public. They say, Jim, aren't you aware of what Bitcoin is? Why do you like it so much? I have never in any interview said that I like Bitcoin. I have said Bitcoin serves a function. Bitcoin allows transparency in passing large amounts of funds from one party to another. Bitcoin allows movement of money without the dollar ferryman trying to snag 2% on the movement. Bitcoin has honorable participants and dishonorable participants like traffickers. Bitcoin serves a purpose. I'll give you an example. A fellow in South America gave me a gift of a couple grand, a couple $1,000, and I was very grateful. And he said, Jim, I want to give you some XRP. And I said, well, pass it along in Bitcoin, and I'll immediately buy XRP with it. And that's what happened. So the gift of XRP came in the form of Bitcoin, and I never held the Bitcoin for more than 4 hours. So Bitcoin serves a purpose in moving capital, moving funds. And I know that there's a lot of controversy on what is the basis of Bitcoin. And I understand all that. And that's why I don't use it as an investment. I move my Bitcoin into XRP. XRP is going to, I think, set the world on fire. Bitcoin is a device. It's not an investment. It's a wagon. It's not a destination. Anyway, there is no new gold. And remember that the CME can short the daylights out of Bitcoin whenever they feel like. And with the AI computers at work, I think Bitcoin is vulnerable. So I don't recommend keeping your money in it. And there's a certain fellow in Guatemala who owns 1 million Bitcoin, and he should be careful. I think he would be wise to diversify into coins that have intellectual property. I like the concept of mining. I think it has a lot of value. There's no mining and accounting function, verification, validation for the dollar. We don't know how much the Swiss, Colombians, or Mexican drug cartels hold. We don't know what Langley holds in Greek ports in containers in dollars. There's no auditing of dollars. You can't even audit the Pentagon. So don't tell me about the flaws of Bitcoin. The flaws of the dollar are 100 times worse. The new gold is still gold, and that will be quite apparent in the next few months.
Have a lot of cryptos been heating up?
Pretty much every crypto that I've been watching, and I don't watch 100 of them. I watch 5 or 6 of them, and they're all doing well. There just seems to be a new era dawning with the United States getting out of the way, getting regulators no longer in a position